Hello and welcome to About Books. On this edition I'll be speaking to local author, poet and painter Sylvia Hikins, who will be talking about her new book, See Out the Crazy Times. Later in the show, Gaëlle Legrand visits Central Library, which is currently hosting the world's only contemporary book art exhibition, Shakespeare Now. But first tonight, Sylvia Hikins. Born in London but now living in Merseyside, Sylvia is a writer, a poet, a painter and a musician. A winner of the Waterstones Poetry Prize, Sylvia has appeared widely at literary events, including the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Having previously worked on her love of poetry and short stories, See Out the Crazy Times is her first novel. I spoke with her recently to find out more. I'm here with artist, poet and novelist Sylvia Hikins, who has just published her first novel, See Out the Crazy Times, which is about winter 1939 and a world gone mad. Welcome to the show, Sylvia. Would you like to tell us just a little bit, for those viewers at home who've perhaps not yet read the book, just a little plot synopsis, but without giving too much away?
No, I don't want to give too much away, but obviously it's about the Second World War, the lives of two families who become intertwined because of the war, and then those post-war years where we had won the war, whatever that meant, yet all that grief and loss was still there.
It's still continuing.
And our generation, my generation,
yeah,
and your grandparents had to grow up in that. Your parents maybe had to grow up in that. So it's about that, but it's also based on real events, because I've kept a diary since I was 12 years old, and I've always jotted down stories that people tell me, and I became very fascinated about the Second World War. Every family has its own stories of the men who went off to fight, of the grannies and the mums and dads who survived the Blitz.
And the way in which women began in particular to work and social life changed very much in a gendered way.
And even the way they changed the job specifications so that the men could come back and get the jobs. Yeah. All that social history is in there, which I researched, so that's also in the book as well.
You chose to focus the book on 5 key characters, yes, rather than make it a cultural history per se. It's very personal, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you have one character you're particularly attached to? I do. It's Lily.
Well, it is Lily.
I love
the
Lily.
Little one.
Yeah.
Who, has all those cultural things, the family kinship, how Scotland Road, I mean, this is the East End of London, but Scotland Road is a comparable sort of social environment, and how difficult it is for people to struggle against what is the usual way families behave and the way you're expected to behave. So she's the sort of hero of the book, I think, although she's still a young woman when we leave her.
And would you say that she represents the future as well as obviously representing herself, or a type of female at the time?
I would hope so, although I do keep it deliberately ambiguous.
To read the book to find out what happens.
Yeah, but there is an ambiguity, but I hope an optimism as well.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
So why did you choose to focus it on individual people, like Lucy and Edna seem to me, for example, to be opposite types in some way, but to share a common struggle?
Yeah. Well, I decided to have a few number of characters in it because when I read Dr. Zhivago I was totally lost and had to have a couple of contents thing. Yeah. So I thought I'd keep it simple, but I really wanted to get inside those characters. So when I was writing it, I became Lily, I became Edna, I became those characters and gave the counter views and their struggles. I tried to validate everybody's struggle, even though they're very different,
and
not blame them for the way they were.
Yeah.
So that's why I kept it too limited, and I wanted that interaction between the women. I do feel this is a woman's book. I hope so.
But it has an appeal for male readers too, I'm sure.
Of course, yes. I would hope so, because, the men struggled as well.
Yeah.
So I don't deny that. But the focus is upon the changing lives of women. And also, post-war, there was a fantastic opportunity for women with, the new social systems of free education and so on. That was there, opportunities of career and work. So that was focused there for them. But not everyone was able to take advantage of that. And if you had sickness, if you had a family where the father didn't work, the benefit system, although it was a welfare state, was hardly enough to take you through. And
although there's an emotional and a romantic angle to the book, would you say that war is very much an economic phenomenon?
Well, yes, although, of course, more recently it's reverting to the religious thing as well, isn't it? And I've always campaigned for peace. The war profoundly affected my life and my family's life. And so I think that made me, when I became an adult, campaign for peace. Because at the end of the day, the guns have to be put down and people have to be around the table. There has to be a political solution.
And I think one of the things that you dramatise really well is how difficult it is to pick up the pieces and carry on, and the tendency amongst the older generation to use silence as not as a distancing tool, but as a form of comfort.
Absolutely. People, they can only cope by building that barrier.
Yeah.
And talking with friends who live in France and Germany, they told me it's exactly the same there.
Oh, really? So you don't think it's a particularly British or English phenomenon?
It's not the British stiff upper lip.
Okay.
I think it's a psychological phenomenon where people go through pain and grief, and in order to move their lives forward, they have to push it to one side, build a wall, and then pretend it hasn't happened.
But it's not quite denial, is it? There's something else happening, more profound than that, a way of moving forward and valuing the future and valuing now more than a focus on the past.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this magazine here, Picture Post, which features in the book, and this is an original.
Just make sure that we can
This was a mainstream magazine and published in the beginning of 1941, and that sets out the vision of how we wanted the United Kingdom to be, and what is there. Homes for everyone, careers for women, a national health service, things we take for granted.
Yeah.
We weren't there then. And in a sense, I mean, that's a positive spin with war, that it's such a social upheaval that you can actually think of doing things that you wouldn't have before it happened.
Is there a gap between, again, I don't want to say too much, the world as it appears to be for Lily at the end of the novel and the world as it's actually turned out? Are you actually making a comment or even an indictment about our culture now as well?
Oh, I think I am, yes.
Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
I think so, because I do think, I mean, Liverpool's an exception. I mean, I love Liverpool, and I still think we've got that strong sense of community, and that whole Hillsborough thing has shown that. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, I feel there's a wave of kind of, individual freedom, whatever that means, which can often mean turning your back on the community.
Okay, yeah.
And I think, it's a balance there. Of course we want to be ourselves, but, you could say that freedom is the recognition of necessity. So for me to be free, I have to recognise your needs as well.
Yeah, okay, so it's about respect.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Mm.
How did you start writing? You said you write a diary every day.
Oh, God, I started writing when I was as soon as I could pick a pen up. I mean, I've got embarrassing poems I wrote when I was 10 years of age.
That's cool.
With illustrations, Was
there a particular teacher who was supportive, or your family, or...?
I don't know where it came from. I had a very good English teacher at school, but you see, painting and writing and making music is a way I express my feelings and my view of the world around me. I don't really do believe that writing and poetry can totally change the world, as some of those poets in the 1930s that are in my book, one of them particularly, says... Auden,
he gets a bad time.
Yeah. But nevertheless, I do think it can influence. I've been influenced by books.
Me too.
Books like All Quiet on the Western Front. There are seminal books in all of our lives, I think, that you can say, wow, at the time, that really deeply affected me.
And I'm a different person for having read it.
I think so. It opens a door somewhere for you.
And is that what you're hoping to do?
Well, I hope people will... I mean, this is a time, isn't it? Is it 70, 75 years after or something? The people that fought in that war, there's fewer of them turning up. And I think we're beginning to reflect a little bit about what that was about.
And what do you say to people who have a kind of nostalgia for Blitz and wartime and post-war?
Oh, well, I think you've got to be very careful about... I don't mind nostalgia as long as there's realism with it.
Go on.
It wasn't good. I mean, when I did the research, of course, what I did find out and talking to people was, your home would be Blitz. You'd go and into a rescue station for the night. You'd come back the next day, and thieves have gone over and pinched all your things.
So it's about not idealising a wartime spirit.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
Although I do think the idealisations of wartime are partly a response to the horror of it as well.
It's a way of coping.
It's a
you want to see
thing.
the good things, don't you?
Yeah.
You want to see a positive spin, really. Yeah, I agree.
So you published this with a particular press. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
They're an academic press,
it's a
really.
gorgeous sort of publication, actually. It's
Do you
just
like
beautiful.
it?
Yeah, really.
Well, I did
quality.
design the cover.
I love it. Tell us about that. Is this an artwork of your own?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, I sort of pinched the idea of the child in the red from the film of Schindler's List, with the little girl in the red thing. But it is that idea of looking at a child looking at that rubble and thinking, how am I going to go into the future with this?
It's about rebuilding.
It's about rebuilding, that's right. And okay, that older generation are there, but it's the child that's, it's the focus.
Do you have advice for other writers who are looking for a press? I mean, you obviously found Troubadour. Did they find you? How did that come about?
Well, I found them, but it is very, very difficult.
It is.
It is extremely difficult. And, I mean, I have written other novels and they've not been published. I've not particularly even tried. It is hard, really. And of course, it's more easy in a sense to go to ebooks. I mean, this isn't available in an ebook yet. I have been asked. But I would rather...
Would you advise against that, the e-publishing route, to continue down the whole...
No, I think it's easier for people, the e-publishing. I know,
It's democratic, isn't it?
It is. And isn't that marvellous, actually?
Yeah, it is.
It's liberating for writers and readers, I think, if we do that.
Do you think it's important to write every day?
Well, no, I don't think every day, but I think once you get stuck into it, to keep at it.
Okay.
Because if you want to immerse yourself in the characters, you've got to be there with them all the time, otherwise they leave you. And this took me 2 years to write.
Did it?
1 year, 5 drafts, and 1 year to get published.
Well, thank you very much for coming in to speak to us, Sylvia. So that's Sylvia Hikins, See Out the Crazy Times.
And we are back on About Books with a curious exhibition taking place at the Central Library and celebrates the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death through book art. Simon Ryder, curator of this exhibition, tells us all about this new way of looking at books.
Book art is, I suppose simply, is any book made by an artist. But because they're artists, that means they use their creativity, and sometimes that means they change the materials, so from paper to ceramics, or make their own paper. For some of them, text is very important, and for others, it's more of a visual medium, and so you'll find some of the books here don't have text really, but they're still inspired by Shakespeare.
Right. So when they're creating these pieces of art, is there text inside? Is there an actual story in it?
Some of them have narratives and some of them don't. Some of them have been inspired by particular quotes and then use that as the stimulus for what they've created. But others have taken books and actually used the book, if you like, as the raw material and made book sculptures. And so there's several pieces you'll find here which are actually the works of Shakespeare which have been turned into paper sculptures. So I put out the call for proposals through a newsletter run out of the University of West England, which is international, and I got a lot of international responses, and the final selection includes work from 10 countries, including Australia, Japan, Russia, Poland, USA. I won't give you the whole list, but it's a very international exhibition, and that in itself is very exciting to me as well.
And so you've got all sorts of work here. There's a sculpture just behind you. Can you tell us a little bit about the sculptures that we can find a little bit everywhere in the library, actually?
Yeah, the sculptures are different. When I did my own research about what was happening around the country to mark Shakespeare's anniversary, I came across this press report about some students at Birmingham City University, and they're doing a course in design for performance and events, and their tutor had set them the challenge of making paper figures of Shakespearean characters and Shakespeare himself, who you'll find on the ground floor. I just took the initiative, got in touch with the tutor, said what happens to these sculptures after they finish being exhibited at the university, and they actually went down to Stratford. They were taken by the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust and displayed in Anne Hathaway's cottage and Shakespeare's birthplace and other venues around Stratford. And then I brought them here up to Liverpool.
So who can we find?
So here we can find Shakespeare himself, writing at his desk on the ground floor. We can find Julius Caesar, stabbed in the back. Romeo and Juliet, Richard III, and Caliban. So we have Shakespeare and 5 of his characters here in the library. And one of the things for book art is it doesn't get many opportunities to be exhibited actually. Probably the easiest way to find book art is actually to go to one of the regular book art fairs which take place in various cities, and I organise the one in Liverpool which is happening on July the 8th and the 9th. But exhibitions are few and far between. And there's always a challenge because they're books. You want to pick them up and you want to turn the pages, and in a number of cases these are unique works. And so some of them are valuable, not in monetary terms, but they're fragile and delicate, and so that's quite difficult to manage that for an exhibition. So there are not many places that you can see exhibitions of book art actually.
We should come, definitely. And although reading usually appears as a quiet experience, we found someone who makes sound with books, and even music.
I'm Amy Sturley, I'm an artist, and I'm working with a group of people, and we call ourselves Sound Book Project, and we make music of sorts with books.
What does this mean?
It started with an installation I did, which was a sound piece, and I had an idea that I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a catalogue that made the sound somehow without digital means. And so a fellow artist I was collaborating with, we just started having this dialogue about how could you have a book make sounds. And then he suggested, well, what sounds do books already make? You know, these turning of the pages, these subtle sounds in the different types of paper. But we use mostly just books. And some are altered books, and some might be covered in wax. We have a typewriter, we have books covered in rubber bands, and each of them make a different sound piece that we've composed. When we first got together as a group, we had this table of books, and we're like, how do you play a book? You know, and we had to just play with it because they're not distinct rhythmic sounds. There's all kinds of swooshing sounds, really subtle sounds. And we have found as we perform as well, there's certain types of books, certain page thickness. It's like, oh, this doesn't work, the pages are too thin, and you're looking for a different book for this different sound quality. And one of the pieces, we tear the pages out of a book because it's a good rhythm that goes with some of the other pieces. And it really shocks people, and it's quite funny. Sorry. It shocks people, and they're always asking, why did you choose that book? And some of the libraries we propose to play in don't want us to play there because we rip a book up. And, you know, so it's suddenly quite punk and subversive. And it's also been interesting talking to the other members of the group and what they felt about books, because some of the members didn't like reading. They found it difficult in school, and it was a real struggle. And so they didn't have this precious feel about books. And so they really liked, oh, let's tear them, let's crinkle them up, and we can do this. And so it's really interesting, these different dynamics we've had.
Back in the library, Marilyn and Michael are two of the several artists who have participated to this exhibition.
In the Marches case, I worked on the Hollow Crown, which is about Richard III, and if anybody's watched Benedict Cumberbatch on the television, they will of course know all about that. Part of the Wars of the Roses, it seemed particularly appropriate since we're in Lancashire. And it's a very interesting play, quite a difficult play, but that's an altered book. That's where we take a book that exists already and take it to pieces, reassemble it, do something like that. In this case, I've taken holes out of it, and some people find that quite threatening. But they're often books that are going to be thrown away or remaindered, and so I feel it's legitimate to give them another life, really. And in the Northwest, I have a book I have 2 or 3 books. They're smaller books, and one is about bees and stinging, because bees is all a very a relevant subject today, and I have a couple of other ones, really to help fill a big exhibit, because there's 18 books in the exhibit, plus some more around the side, and so we had to do a lot of work.
I've got 2 books in this exhibition too. One is in the cabinet behind me here, which is just like the Marilyn's, made as a member of the Marches Book Arts group, who are based in Clun in Shropshire, and we're a group of anything up to 15 to 20 of us, depending on each meeting and each event. And my book in here is very similar, in fact, to my second book. And the second one I have in the show is in a different display cabinet as an individual member, and I've actually got a copy of it here. It's called As Nothing Ends Well, and that is an amalgamation of the titles of 3 of Shakespeare's plays. And so this is the first one, As You Like It, and it has some well-known quotes from that play. And the second one is from All's Well That Ends Well, with more quotes. And the third one is Much Ado About Nothing. So, As Nothing Ends Well.
Pessimistic.
It is a pessimistic appraisal, and the book I have in the cabinet is a slightly different version of the same subject.
Can you give us maybe the details of the whole exhibition?
Sure. So it's in Liverpool Central Library, and that in itself is a great benefit because it has much longer opening hours than most galleries. So the exhibition is free to visit. It's open every hour that the library is open. It opened on the 4th of June and continues right through the summer till the 31st of July. There will be a schedule. We're planning to have workshops either for adults or children or both every Saturday throughout the exhibition.
Brilliant. That's great for the summer for kids.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for watching About Books. We'll see you next time.